This episode is sponsored by Law Tiger San Diego. If you or a loved one is injured in a motorcycle accident, call 1-800-LAW-TIGERS for a free case evaluation.
Hello, and welcome to The Scenic Ride, a motorcycle podcast where we explore the most epic roads in North America and beyond. I'm Davin.
I'm Sanna.
And I'm Staci.
Today, we're exploring Michigan's Copper Country, the area which I was born, raised, and lived in until I was about 20 years of age. If you've never ridden this area, today's podcast will give you some insight on the route, plus some insider tips on things to see, eat, and do in the area. Quick little Michigan history lesson to start us off. As most of you should know, the state of Michigan is made up of two very distinct peninsulas, the Upper Peninsula and the Lower Peninsula. The Lower Peninsula is the mitten. Check out a map if you don't know what I'm talking about. Lower Peninsula is also where most of the cities are and where most of the people live. The Upper Peninsula, or the UP, is obviously the other one. If you look at the UP on a map, you'll see that it has its own little peninsula sticking out into Lake Superior. This is known as the Keweenaw Peninsula. This is the area that we will be discussing today. To give you an idea of how remote the Upper Peninsula is, it makes up about 29% of Michigan's landmass, but only holds about 3% of the population. So needless to say, there's a lot of trees and water, but not many people. The Keweenaw Peninsula is made up of 3 of the UP's 15 counties, Keweenaw, Houghton, and a part of Baraga County. This area is also known as the Copper Country. It's been reported that copper has been mined here in some fashion since around 3000 BC. The most recent copper boom, and the one that left most of the remnants, happened between 1840s and the 1940s, with one mine operating up until the 90s. Some of the purest native copper veins in the world were actually found here. In the late 19th century, this region produced over 75% of the copper used in the United States. Another fun fact about the Copper Country is that most of the residents are of Finnish heritage, most of which migrated over for mining. You'll hear more about the migrant influence on the area when we chat about food a little later. Also, everyone's got a sauna. And it is pronounced sauna, not sauna, by the way.
It's pronounced like that in Finland, but
yes,
not in the U.S.
Yeah, I'm a sauna person, so that's how we do it.
Yeah, it's just my name is Sanna, so I have to deal with this a lot.
Yeah, right.
When I moved here, I had to choose basically, because my name is pronounced a little bit different in Swedish, but I had to choose when I moved here if I wanted to be Steam Room or Santa Claus. Like, do I want my name to be pronounced Sanna or Sanna? And Sanna seemed like the least bad of those two options.
That's how I originally taught myself how to say it correctly. I'm like, okay, it's sauna, like not sauna. It's sauna like white people say it.
Yeah, but there's also no U in my name. So anyway, the sidetrack. Please get back to history lesson.
Totally. Okay. Well, anyways,
I love it.
The riding season here in the UP is pretty short. I've seen snow start falling on Halloween, and I've seen it stick around until my brother's birthday on May 9th. So plan accordingly. Unlike the western half of the U.S., the UP is getting hammered with snow this year, so it'll probably be sticking around for a little bit longer this year. I read something on Instagram the other day where Calumet, one of the towns we'll be talking about, was up over 340 inches of snow this year, so they might be breaking the record from 1978 and 79 where they got 390 inches of snow, which, if you do the math and divide that by 12, that's a lot of feet.
It's a lot of snow.
A lot.
A lot.
Yeah, and they get hammered like that because of the lake effect. You know, they're surrounded by Lake Superior on all ends. So, I mean, when I was growing up, there would be weeks where it would just snow nonstop for
crazy.
For weeks. It's crazy. So, needless to say, it's a great place to ride snowmobiles, but that's not what this podcast is about. So, let's talk about motorcycles, shall we?
Yes, but because you talk about snowmobiles so much on this podcast, if you go on Spotify and you look up like other podcasts like this one, The first one that shows up is a snowmobiling
Are you
podcast.
serious? Why? Why?
So yeah, anyway.
Have I really mentioned snowmobiles before? That's funny.
I think maybe once or twice.
Okay. Yeah,
3
no,
times maybe, tops.
it's a strong word. Snowmobile, snow machine, sled. Let's get those.
Oh no.
Let's get them going. Good Lord. Anyways, so like I mentioned in the intro, I grew up in this part of the state. Chassel, to be exact. It was a town of about 800 people. My entire K-12 school had less than 300 students. I had the biggest class ever in school history when I was in 6th grade, and we had 31 students. So that tells you how small this place is. But I got out of there for high school and went to the big school nearby in Houghton. So I was too cool for the little guy down the street. I graduated from Houghton High School, went to Michigan Tech in Houghton for about 3 years, and I've ridden this section of road that we're talking about today probably 300 times, but I had no idea that it was called the Copper Country Trail until Staci was up there last year, the year before, and did her little YouTube video about it. And I'm like, oh, it's actually got a name. Imagine that.
We learned so much from Staci's YouTube.
It's like, yeah, YouTube University, literally.
I love that I am that source for y'all, just being like your personal teacher.
It's so funny. Yeah, I'm like,
Well,
wow.
and I think that's one of my favorite things about traveling to new places. And like, truthfully, you're the one who kind of influenced me to go check out the Upper Peninsula, because it isn't a place that's just easy to get to. Like, you have to want to travel here, even if you live in Wisconsin. Like, Green Bay is the closest major city, I think, and Green Bay is still hours away. And so I rode from, I think, basically Green Bay up to the Porcupine Mountains in a day in the fall. And I mean, that still took multiple hours to do. Granted, it was really cold, so I had to take some stops to warm up. But regardless, I made this a destination trip, and I made it a destination trip because of you telling me how cool this area was and how underrated it was. And it was just a place that you have to visit. And I remember you showing me, like, on your phone on a Google map, you're like, oh, check out this squiggly little road. I used to live up here. And then I went home and I started looking at all that information to plan this trip out. And I was like, this squiggly road is the only road on the peninsula.
It's like, there's technically 1.5.
Yeah, there's 1.5 roads. But yeah, this road ended up being an all-American road. So this is a National Scenic Byway. And I just think it's funny because it's like, this is just a road that you traveled all the time like it was no big deal. But if you're like me and you go after roadways like this to go ride, it's just kind of funny that this ended up being one of those, I think. Just worlds colliding in all the most ironic ways.
Oh, absolutely. And I just, totally took it for granted growing up there. I didn't do anything. I didn't go to, didn't do anything that people go there to do. I literally just rode a dirt bike or a snowmobile around in circles on my parents' property nonstop, but it's a neat area for sure. And it is totally a destination. Growing up in this area, we used to go to Green Bay or Appleton to go school shopping. And when I started driving, I used to race down to Green Bay, and I could get from the sign in Chassel to my buddy's house in Green Bay in 3.5 hours in my neon race car. So, but that being said, it's like, yeah, it's part of Michigan, but it takes you 8 to 10 hours to get to Detroit. You can get to Milwaukee, Chicago, or Minneapolis in a shorter time than it takes you to get to the big city in Michigan. So it's up there.
Yeah, but even though it's a place you have to want to visit, it is totally worth visiting. I think this is one of the most underrated places in the country.
Yeah, and like Staci mentioned, it is one of only 2 National Scenic Byways in Michigan. There is a All-American Road in Michigan, which is Woodward Avenue. I think Staci may have ridden this one before, but it basically goes from the center of Detroit to Pontiac, and it's just a straight road. But it's one of the original, I think it was the first paved road in Michigan, which is why it gets the All-American Road designation, but it doesn't have much other than that. But it's every time I go to Detroit, I ride Woodward from at least Royal Oak to downtown because it is just historic.
It's a thing you got to do. I've never ridden it. Maybe Sanna has. I've never been to Detroit.
My work is headquartered in Detroit, so I have ridden there. It's also actually randomly, I live in California and my day job is headquartered in Detroit, and we have a big project in the Upper Peninsula. So I have to go to like Detroit and the UP for work. But I don't think I've ridden the road we're talking about in Detroit.
Well, now you have to next time you go.
Yes, I will.
Next time. It's M1 and
M1.
Woodward Avenue. Yep.
Okay.
It basically just starts in downtown and just goes on an angle through the suburbs until they stop. But as far as this Copper Country Trail goes, so it officially starts at the Portage Lake Lift Bridge that connects Houghton and Hancock, and it goes north from there up to Copper Harbor, which is the last thing on the peninsula. I want to mention this too before we start getting too much into this road. Like we mentioned on the last episode where, yes, this road is a 10 for the UP, but it would even be a consideration if it was in California or, in the Front Range. Like I put a little note in my notes here that says, Staci lives in Denver and every road between her and Fort Collins is a better motorcycle road than this one, but it's just the fact that this one is the road of this peninsula and it is where it is, and you're surrounded by Lake Superior and all this history is why it's a good road to ride and it's a great destination.
I think context matters. It's not just, the most scenic road you can possibly find. It's like you get to experience a whole new area.
I agree. I think too, like the Upper Peninsula and the history of it that we'll kind of dive into with the mining and stuff. You go through these little historic mining towns and then you do get to kind of curve around and go over by Lake Superior. And if you're not from that area, like that is just such a fascinating thing to like conceptualize, because I even think about these mines and I think about, the people who came over here to mine copper 100+ years ago and just what it would have been like to work in those mines nonstop. And then you pop up out of the ground and there's feet of snow and it's just always cold. It's just, I think that it's just such a fascinating place in that aspect. And so I do think that's important. Like, and I know with the All-American Roads and like National Scenic Byway System, they have a rating of how they decide what's going to get that designation. And I'm sure that stuff has a lot to do with it. So yeah, it might not be the most technical riding and it might not be the most scenic, but I totally think it is worthy of having that designation.
Yeah, I agree. And I just was trying to state a point like, hey, if you're looking to like drag knee and get crazy, this is not the spot. This is just, it's got everything. It's beautiful. It's got Lake Superior. It's got history. It's got all this stuff.
And I think, people always are like, oh, the Midwest is so boring and it's so flat and it's just cornfields. And it's like, but have you heard about the Upper Peninsula? Because it actually is pretty cool and it's still considered the Midwest. I have people argue that with me and they say that the Upper Peninsula isn't the Midwest. And I'm like, the Minnesota and Wisconsin, which is directly south of it, as well as Michigan, are all part of the Midwest. The Upper Peninsula doesn't just like, what do you want to call it? Like Southern Canada? No, it's part of the United States. It's the Midwest. So yeah, that area I think is a special place for that region of the country.
Yeah. And I've had that argument my whole life. It's like, to me, that is the Midwest, like Michigan, Wisconsin, Minnesota, Illinois, Ohio can pound sand. But like in Ohio or Iowa is kind of Midwest to me, but to me, like Kansas, North Dakota's, South Dakota, no, you're not Midwest. You're just there. We are the Midwest.
There. I think Iowa is considered the Midwest. I don't know why, but I just always kind of considered it. But then like, ironically, like Nebraska and then the Dakotas, I'm always like, those are just the Great Plains. They're just in their own little section of the world.
Agreed.
Yeah.
Agreed. So, how do you want to ride this thing up from Hancock, Staci? Since you've done, Sanna, you did it too, didn't you? Or did you?
Yeah, I've done it.
Okay. Well, let's just take the ride up. So, like I said, you start on the Portage Lake Lift Bridge, which is also a cool thing. It's like this big, one of the world's largest lift bridges, and it goes between the towns of Houghton and Hancock. And the canal that runs underneath it it's for ships basically to come in for safe harbor. On each end of Portage Lake, there's a canal that goes into Lake Superior. And this was made for big freighters like the Edmund Fitzgerald that we may have all heard of to come in for safe haven during big storms, because Lake Superior is a lake, yes. But when you're standing on the shore, you can't tell that it's not an ocean. It's freaking huge, and the waves get massive. It will kill you quickly because it's so cold. I mean, it's clear, it's crispy, and it's gigantic. So, and it's a great place to dunk junk for sure, which we can get more into later. But so as you're cruising through Houghton Hancock, you start climbing an elevation, and as soon as you get to the top of the hill in Hancock is where the good stuff starts. So you see Quincy Mine, which is one of the largest. It is the largest remaining mine shaft, as far as I know, anywhere in the UP, and it's the most well restored, and I think it's probably the biggest destination of any of that stuff. Did you either of you guys stop there?
I did. Yeah. I did the tour because you recommended it to me. And there are a couple other mines in that area. I think the Delaware mine also does some tours and whatnot that's further up this road. But I did do the Quincy mine shaft tour, and it was really fascinating. I would absolutely go back and honestly do it again. And because I put this in my YouTube video about the Upper Peninsula, the guys from the Quincy mine actually saw it and they emailed me and they were like, hey, next time you're up here, give us a heads up and we'll take you like to some of the places we'll take you way down there where you're never going to come back. And so there are some other areas of this mine that aren't accessible to the public, but they obviously have it available for other people because I want to say it's a nonprofit, right? That
I believe
runs
so.
it.
Yep.
But it's kind of managed by the National Park System, sort of. They have an interesting relationship with the National Park Service / system. I do know it's somehow interconnected. Sanna might know more because that's more her expertise.
I don't know anything about this specific area.
Okay. Yeah. So somehow we'll just use those spark notes that it's somehow controlled and managed with the National Park Service. I think it's just because this area is so historical.
Yeah.
But it's so cool. And they'll tell you, like, when you go down there, you'll see the water. So they mined so far underground in this mine shaft that, they were hitting like Lake Superior rock bed pretty quickly. Because I know David mentioned earlier that, you're climbing an elevation to this mine, but you're not climbing like a mile high in elevation. So they went, easily a mile underneath the lake. So what they would have to do back in the day was pump all the lake water out of this mine. So eventually when the mine stopped running, they stopped pumping the water out, which means that all of the mine levels that are below the lake bed are all now reflooded. So when you're actually standing in it, like there is a point where like the water sits and you can't go any further down. I think they've had people like scuba dive and do some other stuff there. But yeah, unless you're trained for that and have special permits, I don't think you're going to be going scuba diving.
Yeah, totally. I just read that the water is up to like level 6 or 7 now. So I don't know how far you went down. Did you go down into the mine? Or did you just take the... Okay. I've honestly never been down the mine. I've just been inside of there. So I haven't taken the real tour because like I said, I didn't care when I lived there. Because I was like, why was I birthed here? Why am I here? Why am I trapped? So I was really mad about it until I got to leave and come back. But yeah, taking some notes on this beforehand, I noticed that, they said the water is up to like level 7 now. So you can only go down a mile instead of 3 or whatever it was, which was still crazy.
So when you get to do the tour, there is a little train, and I can't think, cog. It's a cog train. Mm-hmm. And so it's one of the only ones left in the U.S. There's one that takes you up Mount Washington in New Hampshire. There's also one that takes you up Pikes Peak. And then there's this one. There might be a couple others, but there's not very many of them left. This one's probably the least scary of all of the cog trains that I've heard of. But yeah, you go down a hill and then you enter into this mine, and you actually enter the mine on the tour through the old like drainage, essentially, of how they used to pump the water out of the mine. And then you get to walk pretty far back in there, and then they show you a couple little rooms and stuff, and that's it.
How cool. Yeah, I knew the train was there, but I did not know that they bring you down there to enter it. That's pretty cool. That's a pretty far ways down. Yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty neat. And I know that when I was there, they were like the main mine shaft where the workers used to go in. So that whole bucket system where they basically stuff like 10 guys into a piece of metal, like shift it down and start shoving them down into the mine, bring another metal shaft and put 10 guys on it and shove them down into the mine. That is still there, and you can like walk in and view it, but they're also restoring it. So eventually, I don't know what their plan is with that room, but they're doing something there. So I think it's one of those deals where if you visit in the next year or two, it's worth it to like visit again in 5 years because there might be something else going on there. So
For sure. Yeah, they're constantly working on things. And my whole life, they've been, upgrading it as they have money. And when I was a wee lad, that thing was just a rusty mess. And now it's been a beautiful silver thing for, 30 years. So it's pretty cool. And then a lot of the shaft houses and offices and stuff are still up there, which is neat. You can kind of see how the whole deal operated.
yeah, I think it's definitely one of those things. If you're gonna go to the Upper Peninsula, I think that visiting the Quincy mine really gives you a good perception of what it would have been like to live there when that area was truly being established. Because, yeah, again, going back to 340 inches of snow, like, can you imagine just working in that mine nonstop? And I just think it's so cool. So, yeah, if you're going to go up there, definitely plan to spend at least 3 hours there, because I want to say the tour is at least 1 hour. So spend at least 3 hours checking that out. For sure.
Yeah. And as you noted, if you go to the UP at all, make sure you go to the Keweenaw Peninsula for sure, because there's beautiful stuff in the entire UP, but that whole section to me is the best.
I agree. I think the Keweenaw is definitely like the crown jewel of the Upper Peninsula. I think it's like the can't miss thing. And if you're going to do the Lake Superior Circle Tour, which is a big scenic loop that goes into Canada around Lake Superior, parts of it do go up into the UP, and of course, because it's all connected. But the Keweenaw, some people skip it when they do the Lake Superior Circle Tour, and I'm like, no, you have to do that. Like, spend the extra day of your time going up and seeing the Keweenaw Peninsula. Don't just get to Houghton and say, cool, I've seen it, because you have to cross that bridge and you have to go up the Keweenaw to really experience it and see what it's like.
Yeah, so Quincy Mine is a really cool spot, and then as you go north from there, you're just kind of cruising through the bogs and you get to Calumet, which is the home base of a lot of mining operations. The Calumet Hecla mine was based there, and it was almost the capital of Michigan at one point because there were so many people there and that there was so much money that they were going to make Calumet the capital. But it obviously wasn't very central to anything else in the state. So that's why Lansing won out on that one. But a lot of mining history in Calumet. It's just a weird little town with a lot of, buildings still standing, a lot of churches, a couple of good restaurants. Did you stop in Calumet at all? Either of you?
I did. I can't think of the coffee shop right now. It's probably like Calumet Coffee Roasters, honestly.
Coffee Works.
But something like that. And they had a incredible sandwich. I did get like a BLT sandwich there, and then of course coffee. And I wanted to go back the next day because when I did the Keweenaw Peninsula, I stayed the night in Houghton, and then I rode to Copper Harbor, which is only like a 40, maybe 45-mile stretch. It's not very far, but I wanted to, again, see the Quincy mine, experience Calumet, and just, take a peek at that little historic town. I love old towns that are just made of bricks. I think they're so cool. And that's a very good way to explain Calumet, is everything's just an old historic brick building. And then I wanted to spend the time checking out Copper Harbor, maybe looking for some Uper lights out on the beach. But yeah, so I really took my time. So I kind of did a full 2-day tour of the Keweenaw. You can do it in a day, but you're going to have to skip some stuff.
Yeah, you did it right. Did you take the main drag in Calumet that was all the little paver blocks on the road? That was a big deal when they like resurrected that whole deal.
I don't remember. Okay. I know I went by like the main museum, and where like the big piece of turquoise is, that's sitting out there. I went and walked all of that and just kind of moseyed around, tried to check out some cool things. So
yeah, it's a neat spot. One of my buddies, I grew up with him up there, and then he left and lives in Portland for a little bit when I was there. And then he moved back to Calumet and bought a house. And I think he's got it for like 20 grand or something. Just like a 2-story house that's actually super nice and livable.
Wow.
So it's also very affordable.
Yeah, I was there in late September. So just taking a step back, the reason I was in this area at all is the same reason that I go anywhere. There's a national park in Lake Superior, Isle Royale, which is one of the most remote national parks in the US. But the ferry to Isle Royale goes from Copper Harbor, which is at the northern tip of the Keweenaw. So I spent 2 nights in Houghton, and the first night I was there, I had a couple hours to kill before, it was dinner time and everything. So I'm like, I should go find some ice cream. And because it was at the end of September, everything was closed for the season or just starting to close. So the only place I could find that was like, a little bit of a cute ride away that still had an open ice cream spot was Calumet. And there's a spot there in the historic downtown area called the Copper Scoop that was like kind of fancy ice cream, which isn't usually what I like, but they had really good flavors. They had a cardamom that was so good. And I think this was probably the last day they were open for the season. The next day they were closing down for, I don't know, 6 months or something. 9 months. Yeah.
9 months of winter. Ugh.
Oh.
Yeah. And the winter is long. I mean, that was one of the reasons I left there in the first place, because I couldn't deal with the winter. But summer is absolutely gorgeous. Like, it's hot, humid, beautiful summers up there. They are insane. And you're never more than 20 minutes from a lake. So you can easily cool off, which is great.
Yeah, I got in the lake too that same day. I jumped in Lake Superior at the end of September. It was still pretty warm. It was nice out, and the lake was perfect. So nice.
Yeah, no, it's refreshing. This is a good spot to talk about pasties too, I think, because Calumet and Loring were always the good stop for pasties when I was growing up. I think you stopped at Roy's and Houghton, didn't you, Staci? But okay,
I did.
There's pasties are another big thing in the Keweenaw Peninsula and the UP in general, and that's also due to the mining. Because for those of you who don't know what a pasty is, it's basically this
Hot Pocket.
Yeah, it's like a hot pocket. Hot pocket. It's like a hot pocket filled with meat, potatoes, rutabaga, sometimes some onions. Just a nice self-contained delight, and they are very popular up there. And I know where Staci stopped in Houghton at Roy's is a good place nowadays. Tony's Country Kitchen up in Lorium. And when I say Lorium, that's just the other side of Calumet. So
it's literally across the street.
Yes, it literally is. It is. And Calumet is also where M26 and US 41 meet each other, which is something that we can talk about shortly here, where you ride up 41 to Calumet, and then M26 comes into it, and then we're cruising up from Calumet again. We go through a bunch of little towns: Mohawk, Amique, Phoenix, Delaware, and they're all these little mining villages that all the houses are the same. They're all in a row, and they were there just for the mining, essentially. Some places are still, flourishing. Some there might be a house with somebody in it. There's no real rhyme or reason for any of it.
Can we back up and talk about a great pasty debate?
Yes.
Ketchup or gravy?
Ketchup always in the UP. I don't know anyone in the UP who does gravy. I've never heard of that until I left there.
I didn't know this was a debate.
Oh, it's a spicy topic. It is. So I went to Muldoon's when I went to Pictured Rocks National Seashore, because that's one of those pasty spots you have to hit when you're over there. And they have the option. They have like beef gravy and chicken gravy or something. And then they also have ketchup. And I was like, there's so many options. I don't know what to do. I'm a tourist that was ignorant and didn't know. So I put gravy on my pasty. And now I feel like I have to go back to get the real experience with ketchup.
Yeah. No, ketchup is the only correct answer.
I didn't know it was a thing. I had pasties in outside of Negaunee, which is near Marquette. So not in the Keweenaw, but another part of the UP. So I mentioned that my work is doing a project. I work for a glamping startup, and we are building basically a glamp ground in Negaunee. It's kind of an ongoing project. But I was up there. I stayed in Negaunee for like a week almost, several days. And this is a very small town. All the restaurants are pizza places. There's like 400 pizza places and then nothing else. And then I found one little like kind of roadside stand that does ice cream and pasties. And they luckily had a vegan pasty that I ordered, but it didn't come with any sauce options.
No, not even any green shit? Oh, man.
No, it was just a Hot Pocket.
You just raw dog that thing dry?
It was good.
Man.
It was honestly perfect because I like to, bring food with me and eat with a view somewhere. So, I put it in my saddlebag and rode over to the lake.
I think you passed it perfectly in that sense because you took your Hot Pocket and did exactly what you're supposed to do with it.
Yeah. That's why
I felt good about my my options until now that I'm finding out I'm missing out.
Well, have to go back. I'm sure you will.
I definitely will.
Okay, so as you're continuing up 41 from Calumet, you go through all these different small towns, like I said, and 26 will split off again, but we're going to take 41 all the way up to Copper Harbor. And as you get closer to Copper Harbor, the trees start getting thicker, the land starts getting a little bit more rugged, the elevations start to change a little bit, and it just becomes a little bit more, like a great motorcycle road. There's a bunch of stuff near Copper Harbor too. It's a big tourist destination. So there's like the Keweenaw Mountain Lodge. There's a big golf course. There's a ton of mountain biking. And a little fun fact about the mountain bike situation there is apparently the guy or the team or the company that built all of the trails here in Copper Harbor is the same dude that did everything in Bentonville, Arkansas, which we talked about on the last episode. Huh. So this dude goes between these two spots and builds all this rad shit. So that was something I didn't know until maybe a year or two ago. One of my buddies, Patrick, he spends time between both areas. He lives down in Madison, Wisconsin. He goes up to the UP to ride bicycles and down to Arkansas to ride bicycles a lot. And yeah, apparently this dude's company is the spot. So if you've ever been down to Arkansas riding and love that, definitely go up to Copper Harbor and check that out.
Yeah, I had heard that there was some mountain biking, like they're trying to make it a big thing up there, but I didn't realize it was becoming like that much of a thing. But I feel like you did not do this one little stretch of road justice, and so we got to talk about it. So I feel like when you are coming into the final 10 or 15 mile stretch of Highway 41 into Copper Harbor, Davin did mention that the road kind of turns into, kind of a tunnel of trees. And I would argue that this tunnel of trees is way cooler than the real tunnel of trees that's in the Lower Peninsula of Michigan that everyone goes and rides. This little section here, it's only 10 or 12 miles into Copper Harbor, but it's such a little roller coaster. And it's just so it's just surprising because everything else that you've ridden up to this point isn't that crazy. It's kind of just a flat road that you're just cruising down. And then all of a sudden you get to this little stretch and it's like, whoa. And I went and rode this area in the fall. And I had heard that the fall foliage up in Michigan was just insane. So I packed my heated gear and went up there when the highs every day were 45 degrees on my motorcycle. And it was incredible. I mean, the colors were just insane. I felt like I was riding through an acid trip. Not that I've ever done that, but I'm like, man, if this is what Alice in Wonderland is like I get it. The colors were just crazy.
This is so fun. Can I just tell you about my experience riding up the 41? Because this sounds amazing. When I did it, so I rode up the 41 to Copper Harbor from Houghton super early in the morning because I was taking a day trip ferry to Isle Royale National Park. I had to check in Copper Harbor at the ferry at 7 a.m. So I got up at probably 4:30 a.m. in Houghton, got on the road by 5:30 maybe. It was pitch black out. It was super foggy, and it was probably 39 degrees. And the whole way up, it was pitch black. And we'll talk about this, I'm sure, but this is remote forested areas, right? So there's tons of wildlife. I had been having anxiety for weeks leading up to this, knowing that I had to ride for an hour in the pitch black through the forest, not being able to really see if there was like deer or anything. But yeah, so I rode the 41. Didn't see anything. It was just dark. I know which area you're talking about with the tunnel of trees. And I have ridden the one in the Lower Peninsula too, which is really beautiful. I'm sure this one is too. But I could just sense the outlines of trees around me. I have no idea what it looked like. Because then on the way back, I took the 26 along the coast. So I have ridden the 41, but I really haven't because I have no idea what it looks like.
You got a very different experience.
Yeah.
I would say that yeah. Oh, pobres. Oh man. Yeah. I would say that those last 12 miles into Copper Harbor, definitely the best part. It was just beautiful. But Copper Harbor, I think, like, I'll let you take it away, Davin. You know it better than I do, but Copper Harbor used to be like a port for where they would take some of the copper in and out at one point. And so it's just this tiny kind of, it feels like a little fishing town is kind of what it feels like. And there's a couple restaurants and stuff up there and a couple little hotels. And that's where you jump on and off for the Isle Royale ship, right?
Mm-hmm.
The cruise, whatever you call it.
The ferry.
Ferry. Yeah.
There's two ferries that go to Isle Royale from the UP. So one goes from Houghton. That's the Ranger. And then you must have taken the Queen from Copper Harbor.
I did.
And I think they each go 2 days a week or something. I don't know. But then you can also take a float plane or a seaplane up there. So there's options.
You can also get there from the Minnesota side as well.
Oh, yes. So a couple of buddies and I tried riding jet skis there one time, which was interesting. We packed up our stuff early in the morning. We got 10 gallons of gas each extra, I believe we had. And we decided that we were going to go to Isle Royale to see what was up because none of us had ever been there. And I don't remember how long it took us. We were going for hours. And I think for at least 1 hour, you couldn't see anything on either side of you because you were just in the middle of this gigantic lake that could be an ocean for all we know. And I had this old Garmin Nuvi or something. I don't know. It was like the first one that ever came out. It was the first color screen Garmin that I bought for like $500, because it was so, I don't know, such a thing. And we got far enough to see the island and we're like, okay, cool. There it is. And we turned around and went back. And that was my only experience ever with Isle Royale.
That's crazy.
I cannot believe that you grew up there and you've never been out to Isle Royale.
Yeah, never.
That's so crazy to me.
So get this. My dad's dad, my grandfather on that side, he died a year before I was born, so I've never met him. But he bought the farm that my parents live on, that I grew up on, that my dad grew up on. And he didn't get drafted into World War II because he had to stay home to grow potatoes for the country. And the potato farm burned down when my dad was a young kid. And rather than rebuild it and try to make money on potatoes again, he became a carpenter. And he actually built all of the little cabins out on Isle Royale. So my dad has slides at home with my grandpa, his coworkers, building these places. And they have like a wild fox. They would like give him crackers and we'd come in and, like shoot the shit with them in the evenings when they were just, hanging out, getting ready for the next day. Just weird stuff. And yeah, I've never been to Isle Royale.
I'm so jealous. I want a pet fox to just hang out with me. There's for those who aren't familiar with Isle Royale, like it's obviously remote. You got to get there via ferry or seaplane and whatnot, or try and ride your jet ski and hope for the best, I guess.
For the jet ski.
And there's moose. There's lots of meese, and there's wolves, and there is just lots of wildlife, and it's known for people to like backpack through. There is like some lodging, I believe, that you can kind of stay in, but you've got to plan this trip like way in advance in order to experience beyond just taking a ferry, visiting the visitor center like Sanna did, getting her sticker, and then heading, the 2 or 3 hours back on the ferry.
Yeah, because didn't you do the last trip of the year there, Sanna? So if you would have not made the boat back, you would have still be there?
Yeah, pretty much. So actually, you can go there on a day trip. It's almost 4 hours one way from Copper Harbor to the island. So it is remote. It's basically like up on the Canadian border in the middle of the lake.
It should belong to Canada.
It's ours.
It's ours.
But yeah, so I was on the last boat to the island for the season at the end of September. And the visitor centers, the restaurant, and the lodging, it was all closed already. So I did not actually get to visit the visitor center. The bathrooms, nothing was open. There was one boat a few days later that was coming back from the island. So on the ferry that I took, there were actually a few people who came out there to go backpacking for 3 days. And then they would be coming back on the absolute last boat of the season. Which is crazy, to be honest. I got so lucky with the weather on that day. It was 75 and sunny, and the lake was pretty calm. But at the end of September, because you have to plan these trips so far in advance, it's a real gamble to go backpacking, to decide to go backpacking on the last boat of the season in the middle of Lake Superior. I probably wouldn't recommend doing that myself. I think going a little bit earlier is a good idea. But if you do want to go out there, make sure you book your ferry tickets at the very least, a few months in advance, because it is limited. They sell out. Even though this is one of the least visited national parks in the US, they only get usually less than 30,000 visitors a year. But that is because of how remote it is. They just even getting to Copper Harbor is hard enough. And then from Copper Harbor, it's almost a 4-hour ferry ride to the island. And then when you're out on the island, there are no roads. There's no vehicle access whatsoever. You're just hiking, backpacking. You can paddle, canoeing and stuff like that. But generally, you're just going to be on your feet on the island. And there is a visitor center on the mainland. So there is a visitor center in Houghton. I did get my stickers there. Important stuff. But it is a really cool place to visit. There's, like Staci said, a lot of wildlife, lots of good hiking, lots of beautiful lake views. There's a little beach by the ferry harbor that you can, jump in the water if you want to. So definitely worth a visit, but it's a trek. You have to really want to go there.
When you went, did you end up staying the night in Copper Harbor? Or did you go all the way back to Houghton?
I went all the way back to Houghton. So this was basically riding to Copper Harbor in the pitch black, coming back right as the sun was setting, and then riding back. By the time I got back to Houghton, it was dark again.
Yeah, you missed all the good stuff.
It was a very long day.
Yeah, it's like you're on this tiny little peninsula, but it's still those 50 miles back to Houghton. It's a trek. When I went, I decided to stay in Copper Harbor because, again, I just wanted to get the full experience of visiting the Keweenaw Peninsula, because I was I really don't know the next time I'm going to get back here. So I want to truly enjoy this while I'm here. And so I stayed the night in Copper Harbor, and I booked my hotel because the weather was so finicky that time of year. I went in mid-October, which is very dicey on a motorcycle, to try and plan a fall road trip to the UP because it truly could be snowing. One of the days I was there, it actually snowed in Marquette. Well, I was I think it was when I was on the Keweenaw. So even though it was warm enough there, just, a handful of miles away, it was not that warm. So the weather can be really crazy. But all the little hotels that were in Copper Harbor were all booked up. So I had to stay at this, I don't want to call it a dingy motel, but it was a dingy motel. The lady who owned it was super nice. And it was very affordable. But when I looked at the reviews, it was the people that were staying there were people that were about to go backpack Isle Royale. And I was okay, these people are about to go sleep in the dirt for a few days. So I understand. I understand why this hotel is, perfect for them, because this is 5-star resort compared to sleeping in the dirt with ticks and bugs. So it was clean, but it was just very outdated. And I would totally stay there again if it was my only option. But it was definitely one of those things where I was okay, plan the hotel stops ahead of time because there's just not a lot of options. But there are a few restaurants in Copper Harbor. And again, it probably just depends on when you're up there. I went to one called the Harbor House restaurant, and it sits right on the harbor. And I remember the food being really, really great. It's Harbor House and it's spelled like it's German. So they do have kind of like some German influence menu items. However, I think the guy who started it sold it like right after I went there, like that winter, he ended up selling it to someone new. So I can't vouch for what the food's like now, but it was really good when I was there. So hopefully it's still similar, but yeah, that area is just so cool. And at night, earlier I talked about Uper lights, and it's a rock. If you go to the UP, you have to bring a black light with you because you can go out to certain areas in the UP, especially on the Keweenaw. This is such a tourist thing, and Davin's probably like, God, you're such a tourist. But,
Awesome.
but I got on Amazon right before my trip, and I primed a couple black lights to my house to take with me on the trip, so I could go look for Uper lights on the beach, but it was like in the 20s at night. So by the time I got there, I didn't want to look for Uper lights because I just didn't want to go outside. But basically, you shine your light on the rocks right there on the shores of Lake Superior, and some of them will light up like this lava reddish orange color when the light hits them because they have this fancy mineral like embedded in the rock. And during the day, you won't be able to see it, but if the black light hits it, you will. So go look for Uper lights if you're into rocks. It's so cool.
So cool.
It's so cool. And you can find them like in some of like the little tourist shops and stuff around the UP. But I feel like I saw some of those in some shops and I was like, that's cool. But I have to find my own Uper light. I'm not going to buy one that someone else polished and harvested on their own. Like I got to go find my own. So now I have to go back just to look for Uper lights.
Yeah. My mom's uncle used to own a rock store in Copper Harbor. They would sell like Uper lights and float copper and all this crap. It was pretty cute. But Copper Harbor is the spot for 4th of July, by the way. So you guys have both been there. Picture that place with thousands of people. I mean, every road in town is just parked. There's cars parked back to back, filling every yard everywhere. And they just set off these pretty legit fireworks over the harbor, and it's where everyone goes for a good time. It's pretty nuts. Like you never see that many people there until it's 4th of July, and then it just gets overrun.
And I do just want to say I'm looking at Copper Harbor on a map right now. Their streets are labeled 1st to 10th Street, and then there's like 2 streets in between. So it's like a 2x10 wide.
It's a tiny little town.
It's tiny. A tiny town.
There's probably a couple hundred people that live there, maybe not even that. Probably 100. If that are full-time residents.
Yeah, I mean, the reason I didn't stay up there was because there are only so many lodging options and it was all sold out before I went there. So, it's not a big town. There aren't like a lot of options. It's one of those areas where you have to plan ahead a little bit, which I'm bad at doing in general.
Yeah. Literally the end of the road.
Literally, yeah. And Houghton and Hancock, there's a college there, obviously, because Davin went there and or moved up there for a bit. But yeah, there's more options there, which those can still sell out if there's something going on in town. But at least you have something. Were you going to talk about Brockway Mountain, by the way?
Yes, we're going to take a right first. So when you get to Copper Harbor, you basically teabag into 26. If you take a right there and go through town, you actually get to the beginning of US 41. Did you go up to that at all?
I did. Yeah, I took a picture at it.
Yep. So US 41 actually starts in Copper Harbor and goes all the way to Miami, Florida, which is kind of interesting. So there's a sign there that says, has the wooden, signs like you see in these parts of the country, tells the whole story about it, how it goes from here to there. And then obviously the, Houghton, 48 miles, Miami, Florida, 1989 or whatever it ends up being. I think it's 2008 miles from tip to tip, but it starts there. And then from that, where the road ends, there's actually some more of the tip left of the UP. And if you're not afraid to take your whatever motorcycle you have, but if you have an adventure bike, it's even better. You can go out to the tip of the peninsula, and there's an old rocket launch site there where they used to launch rockets to collect like meteorological data. And there's a couple of really cool rock hounding zones. So if you're not afraid to ride another 12 miles out, you can actually get to the tip, and you can go and find a beach to hang out by yourself. And my buddy Ben and we always ride up. Every time I go home, we'll ride up there and do some rock hounding and take some photos and just frolic like a couple of kooky locals pretending to be tourists.
Frolic at the tip.
Yep, just the tip. So you can explore some more out there. And then when you come south, I'm a big loop guy, so I never do an out and back if I don't have to. So take 26 south from Copper Harbor, and then you get a little bit different view. You're along the coast, and there's Brockway Mountain, which Staci would love to tell us about.
It's just really windy.
It is windy. It's always windy.
It's so windy up there, but it's so beautiful. I actually was hoping that on my trip, I would get to see the Northern Lights because the UP is known for their ability to see the Aurora Borealis. And especially in the fall, like certain months out of the year are better than others for seeing the Northern Lights. But unfortunately, the KP index was too low when I was there. But that was one of the reasons I also chose to stay in Copper Harbor, because I was like, okay, if the Northern Lights come out tonight, I'm putting my heated gear on and I'm going to the top of Brockway Mountain, and I'm just going to have my mind blown by some lights in the sky and some, science magic. But I didn't get to see it. But I did go up there to watch a sunset, and it was really pretty. I thought the wind was going to blow me and my motorcycle off the mountain, even parked, because it was just so intense. But you can see Isle Royale from up there on a clear day, and it's just really pretty. I would recommend taking a little scenic detour up there. And it's only like 5-10 minutes. It's not like a super long stretch of road.
I wish I wasn't racing the sun, racing the clock the entire time I was up there, because I pretty much missed everything around Copper Harbor other than Isle Royale. It's the only thing I've done. So I need to go back, I think.
You do. There's, I think, like the best part too about doing Route 26, if you do this in counterclockwise fashion like we're talking about, is that you're on the coast side when you're riding this road. So it feels like you're riding right next to the beach, which is really cool. But you are riding next to a beach, but it's a lakefront beach. It's not the ocean. So it also doesn't smell like salt or, stinky seaweed, depending on where you're from. I grew up on the Gulf, so I'm used to like stinky saltwater smell. Like sometimes, out on the Pacific, it doesn't smell like that. So
yeah, I did take that coast road down from Copper Harbor, and it was so beautiful because the sun was setting as I was leaving Copper Harbor. And so riding along the Lake Superior beach like that at sunset, it's really gorgeous. I definitely do recommend that.
And watch out for sand on that road too, because if the wind's coming off the lake, it'll blow right over the road for sure. So that nice fine Lake Superior sand.
I didn't experience any sand issues, but I did go past a section that I think it's called Great Sand Bay. And I think that's where like people do a lot of like Lake Superior surfing, right? Isn't that a destination?
Yep. Yeah, there and then down by Marquette are the two hot spots.
Which is so crazy. Like, I think if you stand there on a calm day, you just don't appreciate Lake Superior for how insane it can be. But for those that don't know, like surfing the Great Lakes is totally a thing. And there's certain sections, like what Davin was just mentioning, where people go out and surf these waves. And it's just crazy to like stand there and think about it, I think.
Yeah. It really is. I was in the other part of the UP, so near Marquette, where there's also a lot of surfing. There's another little peninsula called Presque Isle. And there's like a little county park maybe out there that you can just kind of ride around. It's really beautiful, but there are some surfing spots there. I stopped on the lake. The waves were insane that day. And there was this one guy, this is like almost October. It's at the end of September. It's freezing. The air is cold. The water can't even imagine. This guy's out surfing Lake Superior without a wetsuit on. I don't see that in California in the summer. Like people in San Diego surf in a wetsuit in the summer here. And this guy is out in the late fall in the Upper Peninsula surfing Lake Superior without a wetsuit on. I think the universe are just built differently.
There's a dude on Instagram, like Surfer Dan or something. He's one of those guys. And a lot of his photos just have a big ice beard. Because Lake Superior barely gets above 60 something degrees in the middle of summer. It's always cold. Yeah. So it's It's crazy. And then I wanted to mention too, so we're talking about Brockway Mountain. Yes, it's called Brockway Mountain. You can see far from the top of this mountain, but we're talking like 1,300 feet here. So it's not like we're on top of some 14er or anything like that. Like everything is a little bit different around here. So don't be thinking you're climbing this gigantic mountain. I mean, Brockway Mountain is the hill we used to go up to get drunk before prom. That's I've done that several times.
I think one thing we haven't talked about yet about the UP or the Keweenaw in general is the lighthouses. There's a ton of lighthouses in Michigan, and there's definitely a bunch of them in the UP. I got to stop at the one in Eagle Harbor, and it's kind of a museum. They were redoing it when I was there. There was some renovation stuff going on, so I couldn't go in, but at least I got to experience it, and I did think that was really cool. And then there's also a bunch of waterfalls. I want to say there's like over 300 waterfalls throughout the UP. And I love me a good waterfall. I will chase them forever. And now in the fall, they're not raging like they would be, maybe in June or July, but there's still a handful of them that you can see while you are going down Highway 26. And it's definitely worth, stopping and checking some out. I want to say I stopped at Jacobs Falls. Yep. And checked that one out. It's right there on the side of the road. It's pretty small, but totally worth it to stop and see. And then I want to say I stopped at another one that's like just down the road, and it was a lot bigger, but I think it was closer to Eagle River, but I can't remember. I just remember it was really pretty.
There's also a bigger one. I think it's called Douglas Houghton Falls that was always on private property when I was growing up, but we would break in and go and check it out anyway. But I just read something recently where it's now like public land. So it's like a 10-minute hike, which isn't bad at all. And you go down and it's like a legit, like one of those really long, a long boy that goes into like a little pool, which is cool. So check that out if you're doing some recon for a trip up there, because that's a neat one.
Yeah, there's just so much cool stuff. And like, again, this area is not very large. And, we've been sitting here talking about just the Keweenaw Peninsula for an hour. And there's so much stuff that we haven't even scratched the surface on. It's such a cool, underrated part of the country. And I think that everyone should experience it at least once.
Maybe several times. There's so much to look at. I've got a list of stuff that we can go over here in a second. So to complete your riding part, like ride up 41 to Copper Harbor, take 26 down. It combines with 41 again in Phoenix, I believe. And once you get back to Calumet, you can either take M203 around to the backside of Hancock, or go down through Laurium and Lake Linden and take the canal into Hancock on the other side. So there's definitely options. And in either of those ways, you'll see more mine stuff. You'll see, there's also Fort Wilkins up in Copper Harbor that I forgot all about. That's like an old, like Civil War era fort or something. It's kind of a weird thing packed away.
That is a seasonal state park. So I tried to go there and it was already closed for the year. And when I was there in October.
We used to camp up there when I was a kid, and there in McLean's Park, which is on 203 between Calumet and Hancock on that side. And then we totally cruise right by the snow depth guide or gauge. That's on your way up to Copper Harbor from Calumet.
Yeah, I think that if you're going to go and ride the Copper Country Trail Scenic Byway, I think that you have to get a picture with the snow depth gauge, and just to like stand underneath it and realize how tiny you are compared to how much snow that area gets is, you have to get the photo. I definitely have a photo of me standing underneath it, and I am 5'4". So when that thing shoots up to like 390 inches at the top, you're like, dude, that's a lot of snow.
Yeah. And obviously it's not all at the same time. I mean, like I've been to Calumet where there was, 12-foot banks, snow banks, just of snowfall, but it's over the winter as it falls, it melts, it falls, it melts, it falls. But there's always a ton of snow there. And that's the thing. It's like there is so much snow, and every year they adjust the little arrow on the gauge to whatever last year's snowfall was. It's just a neat thing to like try and wrap your head around, that somewhere at that elevation gets that much snow.
It's crazy, but I think that's also what makes, like you said, the summer so special, even though it's so short. One thing we didn't talk about, and maybe it's, what is your opinion on the bugs? How are isn't there such thing as a black fly season up there in like June, and it's just ungodly awful?
Yes, and it also depends where you are. There's a place called Misery Bay where my mom grew up, at the beach, and there are black flies, no-see-ums, mosquitoes, everything that can try to kill you is there. So some of those spots like Misery Bay or similar areas have all of them. Some places only have mosquitoes. Some years are better than others. So it all depends. I was there last year and there was nothing. I had worse mosquitoes in my garage in Temecula than I ever saw in, my last trip to the UP. So it depends. It's all, how much standing water there was in the spring to let those things breed and all of that kind of stuff. But it can be pretty gross depending on the season. But another little quick story. So now that we're back, we've done the loop. I used to work at a snowplow factory up between Hancock and Calumet when I was in, I think it was high school or college. And we'd have to work from like 6 a.m. to 3 p.m. because it would just get hot up there. And I had a sport bike at the time, and I would do basically my own little Copper Island TT where I would see how fast I could do that loop every other day. I'd ride every day. It wasn't crappy out. And, there's no traffic up there. You'll see maybe 3 or 4 other cars or whatever. So I used to just kind of use that as my own private little racetrack, just because I haven't said racetrack in this episode yet. And dude, it was so much fun. There's actually on 26 coming south from Copper Harbor, there's a little dip in the road that you actually could catch air in a car or on a bike if you're going the right speed. And it's fun as heck. And there was one, I have a note here that says, tell moth story. And at one time I was doing that ride and I was, I don't know, probably doing about 100 and whatever coming down 26, coming up to a stop sign or a car or something. And I was all tucked in behind my fairing and windshield, and I popped up, lifted my visor, and all of a sudden this gigantic moth just goes, poof, smashes me right between the cheek pad and my cheek. And I could feel it was so big and juicy. I felt the juices from its crushed body going into my ear. And I had to pull over because I almost threw up. I was like dry heaving in my helmet because this was so disgusting that this moth just exploded in my face.
Oh,
and
man.
Oh God.
This is why we wear full face helmets with the visor down.
Yeah, that was the nastiest thing that's ever happened on a motorcycle. It just still makes me want to throw up thinking about it.
I feel like one last thing that should be discussed. We talked about pasties, but I feel like there's one other thing that the UP is like really known for, and that is whitefish. And I feel like that's something you're just supposed to eat when you are up in the Upper Peninsula. And so as a local, where would you recommend that someone go?
Right across the street from the Quincy Mine is a little spot called Peterson's Fish Market. And they still do the native fishing thing up there. So if you're a native and you have a boat, you can, have your store, do the fish, do all the stuff. And they are legit like 3rd gen Native American fisher peoples. And they have the best fish selection up there. I'm a little bit weird about it now because I ate so much fish growing up that it kind of icked me out for about 20 years. But now I think I'm back. So I'm going to be back up there this summer. So I'm definitely going to stop at Peterson's and get some whitefish because, it's a lot like our Wisconsin listeners would know, like Friday fish fry is a big thing up there at any, go to the VFW for fish fry, or any restaurant probably has fish fry on Friday night. Did you stop for whitefish anywhere when you were up there?
Not in the Keweenaw. I saved it for when I was actually at Whitefish Point, and I went to a little pub/inn place in Paradise and had some whitefish tacos there, which were great. And that place, I can't think of the name, but it was known for carrot cake, and that carrot cake was insane. I would go back there. Like if I was up in the UP, I would make it a point to go back to this restaurant. And I'm scrolling the UP map right now because I have to tell you the name of it.
I completely forgot that when I was there last summer, when I was home, I had the best whitefish tacos I've ever had at this place in Marquette. It was right downtown, right by the ore dock, like right on the water. My brother and I went there for lunch because my brother lives right outside of Marquette. And they were so damn good, like flaky, delicious. I felt like I was sort of bummed out how good they were because I still thought I hated fish.
The spot that's in Paradise is called the Inn. So for anyone listening to this, if you're a carrot cake fiend or you just want some good food after maybe riding across the UP, I would check that spot out. I do remember there being a line and a wait,
Yeah.
and it was definitely a popular spot. So just keep that in mind too.
That place has been there since I was a kid, and it's been delicious. My dad had an aunt and uncle who lived in Paradise, so we'd go there a lot.
Nice.
But yeah, continuing the food tip, just a quick one. Up in Houghton, it's kind of like where the most civilization is. So between Houghton and Hancock, there's a spot called the Ambassador, which was the Friday night spot my whole life. They have cardboard pizza, which we call it, but it's so freaking good. Good submarine sandwiches, ravioli, spaghetti, whatever. The greatest garlic bread I've ever had in my life. And it's kind of like the spot up there. There's a restaurant called the Sumi, which is basically means Finland. And they have nisu and panukaku and all of the traditional Finnish breakfasts. French toast made out of nisu bread is insane. So if you can partake in the glutens, go to the Sumi. It is so friggin' good. And there's, we already went over pasties, the Harbor House, Carmelitas in Calumet is a little Mexican joint that's actually pretty decent. And did you hit anything else when you were up in the Keweenaw? Either of you that you really loved?
I think we hit all the ones that I really, really enjoyed. I stopped at a spot called the Den, which is like right by the Ambassador, and it was good. I actually went there because I saw that they had cheesecake. So, me and my pie, we'll call cheesecake pie in this episode.
So, yeah, the Den used to be McDonald's when I was a kid. That was where McDonald's was. And there's a big parking deck behind it that's now been demolished. But that's basically where we went and hung out when we were kids, when we were like 16-year-old kids. We'd go and park at the parking deck at McDonald's and just bump our stereos and hang out and think we were cool. Okay, and we could go on for another 3 hours about all the side quests from up here, but quickly we can just go through Porcupine Mountains, Lake of the Clouds. Between Launce and Covington, a little bit further south we're talking now, you'll be cruising down 41 and you'll see like a little Ford blue oval on the hillside. Across the street from that is a mill where they used to make all of the Ford Model T cabs, because Henry Ford used to own a big part of the UP right there. And a lot of the trees and the lumber and stuff that were used for making those cars and cabs back in the day were processed up there. Lake Superior Circle Tour, as we mentioned, that was the first long distance motorcycle ride I ever did. They're talking about when I went to the latest BDR premiere for Montana, they told us that they're making one in Michigan and that most of it's going to be in the UP.
You better love sand.
Right. It's weird there because it's like loosey, sketchy sand too in a lot of those places, or it's just like nasty, slimy, rooted shit.
Sounds like such a great time. Let's plan a trip.
So fun.
But if it's a dirt road, it's just all good. And then there's also the NAR, which is the Great Northern Adventure Route that runs from the Lake Superior shoreline of Minnesota south from there across Wisconsin and then all the way across the UP to St. Ignace. And it's mostly 2-track dirt road kind of stuff, like a BDR, but not really. So there's a bunch of other stuff there. And then the rest of the UP has tons of shit to offer. So we can't even get into that because it would take us a week with Pictured Rocks and Paradise and Tequamanon Falls and everything else.
Yeah. I spent, I think 6 days going through the Upper Peninsula and I still had to skip stuff. And, and of course it wasn't like I was on my bike nonstop. I, went to the Porcupine Mountains. I spent 2 days in the Keweenaw. I, stayed in Marquette and did Pictured Rocks. So I checked that out and that was a day. Then did Tequamanon and, made my way all the way over to Sault Ste. Marie and then over the bridge and the Mackinac Bridge, not the Sault Ste. Marie Bridge. But anyway, there's just so much to see in that area. And I think that it is just such an underrated section of this country. And I will die on that hill. I think that everyone should make a trip to the UP at least once.
And the way I did it the first time I was in the UP, I started in Milwaukee and did a little tour of basically hugging Lake Michigan. We did go all the way up to Lake Superior, then came down the Mackinac Bridge and Tunnel of Trees and the Michigan side of Lake Michigan, and then took the ferry across back to Milwaukee. And that was perfect. Yeah, it was a perfect little weekend trip, just 3 days or something like that. that you can easily do in the summer. And I would highly recommend doing that just to get a little taste of the UP if you don't have a lot of time to spend up there.
Yeah. Staci, did you do 1 or 2 videos on the UP? I forget.
I did one big enchilada. It's like a 35-minute YouTube video.
It's like a film.
And I will say that is probably one of my favorite YouTube videos I've ever made. It's a good one. I had so much fun in the UP. It was one of the hardest videos I've ever edited. I'll tell you that too. I think I have like over 100 hours of editing into that video.
Crazy.
But it was just such a magical trip. And I'm so thankful I got to do it. And it's truly like thanks to Davin, like recommending that I go check that area out. Suffering through the cold weather. There was a day that the high was like 35 degrees. Like, and I had a full suit of heated gear. It's the only way I could have done the trip. But it was totally worth it. Like I would do it again tomorrow, even if it was going to be like a high of 40 some of the days. Like,
yeah, no, it's a cool spot.
So cool.
There's another guy on YouTube called Peter Santinello. I don't know if you guys have heard of him, but he just goes to places and does videos. And he did a few on the UP this past year. So if you're planning a UP trip, check those out too, because it kind of gets a little deeper into the history of the Finnish heritage on one, the Keweenaw Peninsula on the other, and then he does a little bit of like the central to eastern UP on the other. So he gets a lot of fun facts.
Best kept secret in the country.
Yep.
Not anymore. Now we spoiled it. People are going to be so
mad
at us.
Ruin everything. Yeah. Good thing I'm a local because I can just say, suck it, nerds.
Yes.
I think that's one thing with tourism. You know, some places I do think that it's a double-edged sword because you don't want things to be over-toured. And a lot of places are facing the problem of over-tourism and just too many people coming to an area and loving it to death. But I do feel like going back to the very beginning of this podcast where we talked about how you have to want to go to the UP. There's a reason that not a lot of people live up there. Like the weather isn't for everyone. Have I mentioned the weather isn't for everyone? Because I do think that, you know, like you hear about people moving to Wyoming and Montana and how they think it's going to be so cool because they saw it on Yellowstone or something. And then they live through a winter or two of it and they hate it and they move. And I do think that that's kind of a similarity to the Upper Peninsula where I don't think a lot of people like the weather and it is so cut off from the world that you have to really want that lifestyle. I don't think that is for everyone, especially in today's world where we are all so used to, you know, Amazon Prime dropping something off. If I order it right now, it'll be here in 3 hours. That's not really a thing up there. So you have to be willing to like take a step back from like modern society. And therefore, I do think that tourism is something that is sustainable in that area because you're just not going to get a bunch of people that are going to look at it and say, yep, I'm going to move here.
Yeah.
You know, so I think there is balance. I think,
and that place depends on tourism so much to operate, like between snowmobiles in the winter and boats and bicycles and humans doing whatever in the summer. Like there's people that depend on that, and if there's a bad year for both sides of that, I mean that they're screwed. So the fact that they're having such a good winter this year will help because there's been a couple of bad ones in a row, and bad meaning not good as far as like no snow. And plus my parents have 200 acres up there that I need to be worth millions by the time I retire. So anyone who wants to go there should go and check it out because that 200 acres is worth about $200,000 right now. And I'd like to be worth it. I like it to be worth about $5 million.
You too can grow potatoes for $5 million.
Right. Yeah. No, it's cool. And I love talking about it. So, because it's not all bare tooth passes and tails of the dragons.
Thank God.
Yeah, I agree. I think sometimes, you know, like we've talked about, I think sometimes it's going back to like what makes an all-American road or National Scenic Byway, right? It's not always about how twisty the road can be. Sometimes it's about what else you can experience and understand from that road. And I think that the Upper Peninsula is like the perfect example of that. It's, you know, the history, it's understanding a different way of life. It's, you know, like all that copper that came out of the Keweenaw. Like it's the reason we have so much electricity in this country, or did when it was all being produced. It all came out of that area. And so I think it's just a rad place.
I think it's also part of what makes this country such an amazing place to explore on motorcycle is that there are so many different kinds of places. It's not just Beartooth Pass. It's not just like the Utah Red Rocks or the Grand Canyon. It is all different ecosystems and, types of landscapes that you can think of probably exist in this country. I live in San Diego, and a lot of my friends who grew up here, they hate the desert and they just want to see trees. I grew up in Sweden. I was surrounded by trees. Actually, where I grew up looks a lot like the Upper Peninsula. And I love the desert because it's so exotic to me. So it's just like there's something for everyone, and you don't have to stick to just one thing, and you don't have to just go ride twisty roads and with epic mountain views. Like sometimes just going to a really remote place that not a lot of other people visit is worth it just to be able to say you've been there.
I agree.
Yeah. Well, that's it for today, folks. If you've enjoyed this episode, we would really love it if you would rate and review it and subscribe to the show. Follow The Scenic Ride on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, and YouTube, and check out thescenicride.com for previous episodes, merch, and to sign up for the newsletter. Next time, Sanna will be covering a region in a country we haven't talked about yet, the Northern Baja Peninsula in Mexico. So stay tuned for that one. Until then, enjoy the ride!
The Scenic Ride is hosted by Staci Wilt, Davin Ortonen, and me, Sanna Bowman. Our theme music is by Ryan Sin. If you like the show, please rate and review it and tell your friends to listen. For all the latest updates, follow @The Scenic Ride on Instagram or visit thescenicride.com. Thanks for listening.